Thank you for that warm welcome. And it is my great honor to address the Free Iran 2021 Summit. Today, along with all of you, thousands of freedom-loving people across the United States and Europe, Iran, and nations around the world are joining together in pursuit of a common cause: the liberation of the Iranian people from decades of tyranny and the rebirth of a free and peaceful and prosperous and democratic Iran. Now, this is the first opportunity I've had to speak at length about Iran since completing my term as Vice President of the United States. And while I no longer speak on behalf of the United States government, I can assure you, as others you will hear from today, my countrymen, I'm confident I speak for the views of tens of millions of Americans, and I tell you with certainty that the American people support your goal of establishing a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iranian republic that derives its powers from the consent of the governed. It's true. Now, many American citizens trace their family roots to Iran. More than 1.5 million Americans, including many gathered here and looking on across the country, were born in Iran, which means the United States is home to more members of the Iranian diaspora than any other nation on earth. And America has been incredibly enriched by your contributions to our culture, our economy, and our society. Most Iranian Americans came to the United States following the tragic events after the revolution in 1979. They chose to make the United States their home because they knew that America is and will always remain the land of liberty. But for those who were left behind, many of your family members, and to those that are looking on from afar, life over those years has been full of misery and hardship. What the Iranian people have endured since 1979 will be recorded by history as one of the great tragedies of the modern era. As a former elected leader, as an American citizen, as a man of faith who believes that all people are created in the image of God, the Iranian people have always been on my heart throughout my 20 years in public life. In 2009, like so many other Americans, I remember watching with great hope and anticipation as hundreds of thousands of people across Iran rose up to reclaim their birthright of freedom. In the 2009 uprising, millions of courageous young men and women filled the streets of Tehran and Tabriz in what seemed like every city and village in between. They denounced a fraudulent election. They demanded an end to decades of repression. Those brave protesters looked to America, and they looked to the leader of the free world for support. But as I saw firsthand as a member of Congress, sadly, for days, our administration remained silent. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, it was my honor to take action, recognizing that in their hour of need, there could not be an abdication of American leadership. The American cause is freedom, and in that cause, we must never be silent. So as a member of the House International Relations Committee, I went to work I worked with a distinguished Democrat member of Congress named Howard Berman. We authored a resolution that the late Senator John McCain and Senator Joe Lieberman, who is with us here today, introduced in the United States Senate. We expressed America's support for the courageous young Iranian protesters, and I'm proud to say it passed almost unanimously in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And Senator Lieberman, thank you for your strong and decisive leadership on that day. And there's every indication that the tyrannical regime in Iran knows their days are numbered. The recent selection of Ebrahim Raisi to serve as Iran's president, I believe, is a sign of the regime's growing desperation and vulnerability. 30 years ago, Raisi was in charge of the Ayatollah's death squads, and he's now the president of that country. A brutal mass murderer, responsible in 1988 for the massacre of 30,000 political prisoners. His selection as president is clearly intended to quash internal dissent and intimidate the people of Iran into remaining silent. But we must never remain silent in the face of evil. Many people attending today know well just how evil Raisi is. Many of you gathered here and many of you looking on lost loved ones by Raisi's hand. You lost your homes, your livelihoods. And as I heard in a meeting just before we gathered here, some of you barely escaped his grip with your lives. So today, with other distinguished Americans, we join you in pledging his crimes must not go unpunished. And he must be prosecuted for crimes against humanity and genocide. Mrs. Rajavi is an inspiration to the world. Her 10-point plan for the future of Iran will ensure freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and the freedom for every Iranian to choose their elected leaders. Our greatest hope must always be for a peaceful, cooperative, and harmonious coexistence with Iran and all the sovereign nations of the region and the world. Because here in America, we know the Iranian people. We've seen all that you've achieved in our country when you've been free to pursue your hopes and your dreams. All free nations of the world must continue to support the Iranian people in their calls for freedom and demand that Iran's leaders cease their dangerous and destabilizing actions at home and abroad. We stand with the proud people of Iran because it is right, because the regime in Tehran threatens peace and security in the world. And no oppressive regime can last forever. I believe with all of my heart that the day will come when the Ayatollah's iron-fisted grip on Iran is ended. I believe that a new glorious day will dawn, a bright future will begin, ushering in an era of peace, stability, prosperity, and freedom for the good people of Iran. And so I pray with all my heart that that day will come soon. And looking at all of your shining faces and seeing the broad support so well represented by distinguished Americans here, I believe that day of a free Iran will come soon. Thank you.